Resource Watch is brought to you in association with Thebe Investment Corporation.
Hello and welcome to the first broadcast of Resource Watch, the show that brings you news in and around commodities. In our launch show, we are sitting down with the newly appointed Minister of Mineral Resources, Ngwako Ramatlori. Minister, thank you so much for making the time to sit down with us today.
Good evening.
Now, as we are headed into the 19th week of the costliest and longest strike in South Africa, this must be top of mind for you in your first 100 days.
Indeed, it's top of the range. Yes.
It is top of mind. Let's talk about your strategy, Minister. You have assembled a government task team. What is that government task team tasked to do, in essence?
The idea is for them to assist the parties to come closer to one another. But the task team is composed of finance, labor, and ourselves. That is minerals. So these are technical people who crunch figures. They can model, they can simulate solutions. So it's a highly skilled team. Mm-hmm. So it gives me the capability to intervene, so to speak. And that's what we are doing, intervening. We are not negotiating. What we are doing is to assist the parties to find one another. In other ways, to negotiate with one another. Because the strike having taken so long, you find that attitudes and positions have hardened. So our job is to put a bit of oil on the wheels so that there can be movement forward. For instance, you're looking at the living conditions of the workers in areas around mines. You go to Marikana, it's quite a horror story. So we could collaborate together with them to resolve some of those conditions there, because in any event, it's part of our mandate to make sure that our people are properly accommodated.
I understand that you may not be in a position to share numbers with me right now, but in terms of the terms of the oil that you're using to bring these parties together, what have you introduced in that proposal that you think might bring these two parties onto the same hymn sheet?
One of the things that we have done is to recognize that there are people who are close to AMCU. For instance, the bishop here in Pretoria, and you have got Dali Bofo, individuals like that. And our approach has not been to exclude them, it was to bring them in so that they can assist with the political side of issues. Government is considering, at the conclusion of this exercise, to take the matter back to the court so that we don't substitute the official institutions that are created to resolve this matters such as this. So we'll be taking it back there once there is an agreement.
Let me maybe move on, Minister, from this particular strike and let's look at the unions broadly. We've seen the CCMA coming in, we've had the labour courts coming in, we had a prior government intervention under the then Deputy President Kgalema Motlanthe. Are the unions too strong in South Africa?
I think our law encourages strong unions. And when you have got strong unions, it's easy to reach agreements. This is our experience up till this point. Unlike where you have got labor that is scattered and therefore is not represented.
So, Minister, what's gone wrong in South Africa then?
I think, for instance, we have been very slow when you look at the mining industry in really doing things that they should have done over the past 20 years. The workers there, they They work under very difficult conditions, and historically speaking, and that needs to be recognized.
Let's pick one issue out, and maybe let's look at the migrant labor system, which is the backbone of this system.
Right.
In your administration, are you focused on changing this system, and if so, how?
One of the things that we are looking at is to rotate the workers homewards on a regular basis. In other words, they should not establish secondary homes here at the workplace, because that tends to split their income into supporting the home in rural areas where they come from, but also to support the home here at the workplace. Now, if you rotate them on a regular basis at the expense of the mine, then you won't have a split income. They'll spend it there where they're coming from.
Are you saying that we could potentially be seeing the end of living out wages in South African mining?
Oh, we're looking at that, definitely. We're looking at that.
So more changes also on the horizon. There's been a lot of talk about the regulatory environment and the pieces of legislation. Let's go back to the Charter, which is due for review. We have the issue of ownership top of mind. What are you going to be doing on that front?
My understanding is that by 2014, the Charter should have been fully implemented. And so beyond the strike, I'll be seeking to ensure that there is compliance with the Charter, and even looking into means and ways of improving on it, because it's a minimum requirement.
What is improvement, Minister, in essence?
We haven't democratized the economy, and that's the biggest challenge that faces the country going forward. So when the NC talks about the second phase of transition, we are referring precisely to the steps that we must take to change the ownership of the economy of this country.
So we're sitting on 26% in terms of ownership in the mining industry as a target that has not been met appropriately to date. How are you moving that target? Are you increasing ownership? Is that what we should be expecting? Or are we going to be overhauling the industry altogether?
What we propose to do is to follow the suggestions that have been made, for instance, by the Communist Party, where we get all the stakeholders and we relook at the industry afresh. And out of such a gathering, we'll come out with solutions to the problems. But definitely, the idea is to increase the pace of change with regard to ownership, management, and acquisitions in operations, the whole front, the entire industry as it operates.
Let's look at the gold sector now, as the negotiated packages come up for renewal and talks of a possible strike there. How are you going to avert that?
The principal function of government is not to mediate between labor and the employers. We have built and created institutions that must assist in resolution of such complex.
The collective bargaining system as it exists right now, the Minister, hasn't proven to be up to the task.
It's under a lot of stress. But I think, for instance, one of the things we need to look at is changing the laws, which gives us teeth. If the parties fail to resolve their disputes, at some point, the state should be able to find a legal way of resolving those issues. Obviously, it will be the Minister of Labour who would have to look at that. But what I've realized with this particular strike is that arbitration seems to be only on the basis of willingness by the parties. In other words, compulsory arbitration, the legislation that I've looked at is silent on the issue.
Yeah.
But it does not mean we may not be able to do it. And in fact, I might have to try it if all else fails now, and then see what the court does.
Right.
But it's something I'm looking at definitely.
Let's talk about inequality in South Africa. When we talk about the pay gap, which is at the core of the strike that we're seeing in the platinum industry, the mining companies in South Africa are at the top of that list in terms of the gap we see between what's paying chief executive officers and the lowest paid worker who's in the trenches. Again, a focus for you as you step into office?
We have a very big challenge as a country, because in 20 years, whilst we have done a lot of things good, we have produced one of the most unequal societies in the world. And we left wealth to stay where it was. In other words, wealth stays in the white hands. It's as simple as that. And we must begin the process of transferring elements of that wealth to the majority. And the various initiatives that government takes, including in mining, would then begin to address that question. We are going to be very aggressive in doing that.
Now, Minister, I understand that all appointed ministers have to sign a performance agreement with the President. What are your targets?
No, we haven't signed. We have got a month to do that. You get into your department and you look at the things to be done, and then you put them down, and the President then countersign, and then they check on the pace of delivery regarding those targets.
I know it's only been 2 weeks, and I know I might be being unfair here.
Yeah, sure.
But maybe the top 3 things that you think are certainly going to be in that performance agreement from your side anyway.
I'm being currently briefed by the DDGs in terms of the content, that is the heart of this ministry. So far, I've gone with human resources. That's the only briefing I've had. And there, I'm sure we're going to have to strengthen internal audit so that we don't have qualified audits. Secondly, I'm going to strengthen the legal wing of the department, because we litigate a lot. And when you issue licenses or deny licenses, you've got to be very solid on the legal front. So those two at the moment I've seen.
Final question.
Yeah.
Your vision for South Africa, and in particular for this industry, with all of these legislative proposals that we've discussed today, where do you see South Africa in terms of the industry and its competitiveness?
In 5 years, we should have a representative mine industry in terms of ownership, in terms of management, and in all other respects. That's what I envisage for the future, for my ministry.
Minister, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us today. Lovely.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Well, that's it for Resource Watch. Don't forget to catch the show again next week. Remember that you can stay engaged on Twitter. That's using our hashtag Resource Watch and following at CNBC Africa or following me at Nozi Pombandwa. Until then, it's goodbye for now.